Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Maarten Mulders. I work at InfoSupport, a Dutch company. And I used to work there together with somebody whose name sounds almost the same, if you're not Dutch. And if I'm not mistaken, you would even write it the same in Hebrew. Maarten, maybe you can introduce yourself as well, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Maarten Mulders, 28 years old, and I'm working at a company called Jamepoint. And indeed, I used to be a colleague of Maarten. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So this story brings us back to a place in time when we were both working at InfoSupport as software engineers, consultants. And wait, let me share my screen. I can't just do two things at the same time. Like so, that works better probably. All right. Yeah, so we used to be colleagues, and back in those days at InfoSupport, we were discussing, hey, we're a consultancy company, but we have a lot of software engineers among our ranks. What does our engineering culture actually look like? What do we think is important in the way that we work and the way that we operate? And we considered that one of the things that we do a lot is we use a lot of open source software. But open source software, using it, let me put it different. Open source is more than just consuming. That's one of the things that we immediately understood. We can say, okay, that's cool, open source software, it's free, let's use it, let's benefit from it, and let's do cool projects at our clients. But that didn't feel right, because open source is free, yes. It's free as in free beer. That means you don't have to pay money to use it. But it's and the other type of free is that it's free as in free speech. So that means you can inspect the code, you can change the code, you can verify for yourself that it worked correctly. But when I say it's free as in free beer, like you don't need to pay money, that is in itself correct, but there's more to it, because somebody is paying for it. Somebody is investing time. And as we know, time is money. So if we just say it's free, we don't have to pay, we're good to go, that's not the whole story. That's not the whole, that's not everything. There's more to it. So as I said, engineering culture, what does it look like? Well, we said to each other, it's important that we recognize this fact, the fact that people are investing their spare time into open source and that we benefit from it. So let's give them something back. And let's see how we can actually contribute and make open source projects better. And we did that in a couple of ways. We already had 2 open source projects that we developed in-house for basically just operational stuff, things that we needed to do anyway. A relatively small one, which was a living documentation system, and a slightly bigger one, which is called Striker, and actually got quite a lot of traction over the last few years, which is a mutation testing framework for various languages. So, but as we said, open source is about contributing, and we leverage a lot of open source projects. We want to give them something back. So how are we going to do that? Well, we decided we can do that in 4 ways. The first thing is we can invest time. And as I said, we're a consultancy company, so time is relatively expensive to us, because we can also use that time to work for clients and bill them. But that's one very practical way of giving back. We could work on an open source project that we use as well. The second thing that we thought we could do is we could organize events to actually encourage other people to do contributions. So you could think hackathons or just multiple day hackathons or just single day hackathons, where we could actually make people enthusiastic about the whole idea of working in an open source environment. If we would spark our own open source projects, what better way to promote them than to create some swag around it? For instance, I mentioned Striker, they have t-shirts, they have socks even. So that could be a cool thing. And then finally, we want to support our employees legally when they are considering to do something with open source software. And for Maarten and I said, when this whole thing was defined, and we said, okay, we would like to start contributing to Maven, and we would like two things from those four. We would like to use some of our time to start doing contributions to Maven, and please advise us in a legal way what is the best way to do that. So that's what we asked for, and that's what we got. I think we got 1 day each. No, what was it again, Maarten? We did 1 week every 2 days, and then we worked together, right?
Yeah, it was 1 day per 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 day per 2 weeks. So the two of us would be sitting in an office. Yeah, back then it was still allowed to do that. And we would basically, we started with small contributions and just bug fixes, documentation updates, and things got more serious and more serious. So that legal advice was absolutely necessary. So legal advice, that maybe we should zoom in on that one a little bit, because legal, why? We're not lawyers. No, we are not, and we don't want to be. But at the end of the day, every open source project has their license, and you may know licenses like the MIT license or the Apache 2 license, and that's kind of a document that says, hey, you as the user can use this software, but mind you, you do not have any right for support. You can make money out of it and you don't need to pay us, but don't expect us to provide 24/7 support or to fix exactly your bug because you think it's necessary. And in the same way, there's an agreement between the Apache Software Foundation, which is the legal entity that owns Maven and many other popular open source projects, by the way, and the people that contribute to it. So the first document that we had to consider is called the Apache Individual Contributor License Agreement, or ICLA for short. And the ICLA is an agreement between me as a person and the Apache Software Foundation in the United States, saying that, hey, I'm going to contribute stuff, be it code, be it bug reports, be it tests, be it documentation, whatnot. And I'm giving that to you, and I hereby promise that I will not be suing you for copyright infringements, etc. On the other hand, in the same document, the Apache Software Foundation promises to me, well, you're a human, you can still make mistakes, and maybe you will someday, and maybe we will be harmed because of those mistakes, but we will not sue you over that. We accept the fact that you do it with the best intentions, and we will not be claiming anything from you that you didn't give us. But now comes the culprit, because both Maarten and I were doing this in company time, there's a second, or actually a third party involved, and that's our employer. So for me, InfoSupport, and for Maarten back then also InfoSupport, but now J-Point. And that's called the Corporate Contributor License Agreement, or CCLA for short. And the Corporate Contributor License Agreement is pretty much the same type of document, except it says that the company that you work for gives the intellectual property of whatever you contribute to the Apache Software Foundation. And the Apache Software Foundation, on the other hand, says, well, thanks a lot for that. We will not be fighting you in court for whatever your employees gave to us. We will not sue you if you break our build server and we need to order a new one, all kinds of stuff. So In short, both documents are bidirectional. That means they safeguard both sides of the agreement, me as an individual or my employer as a corporate, and the Apache Software Foundation as the receiver of my contributions. Well, so far so good. I don't want to spend too much time discussing legal stuff because, as I already said, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm very happy actually that I didn't have to study those documents. I could just hand them in and ask, hey, could you please assess those documents? And if you're fine with them, could you please make sure they're signed on behalf of the company? Of course, I'll sign the ICLA, but could you make sure that they get signed on behalf, that the CCLA gets signed on behalf of the company? And when that was out of the way, we could do even bigger improvements. And it ended up with Maarten and me being asked to join the Maven community as a committer, which gives us a little bit more direct influence on short-term decisions in the project, where it heads, what is going on, and how we deal with certain issues. So that was how it all started. Then the major question is, what did we do? And for that, I would like to give Maarten the word, because he will be showing quite a lot of the things that we built over the past years. And you could, if you want, consider this a more Maven 4.0 sneak preview, because he's going to show us a lot of stuff that will make it into Maven 4, but it's not yet released. So that means that I need to stop sharing.
More question here.
Yes, sure.
So there is like a gap in the timeline in your story. So did you have like sort of a road that is incremental in terms of the code that you contributed? Like you started small and then you made it bigger?
Yes, I would certainly say so. I think the first things that we did were relatively small stuff. Not really the kind of thing that you would mention on a hacker garden party or something. It's not really like, oh, I'm proud of this, look at that. But given the fact that we had a full day that we could really dedicate on working on Maven, we quickly thought, well, it doesn't make sense to start to keep on doing all those tiny things. We want to do the bigger things. Excuse me. We want to do the bigger things exactly because of the fact that we have so much time and so much focused time. I mean, it's not in the evening when you're tired after your day-to-day job. This is for 1 day in 2 weeks. This is my day-to-day job. I'm fully focused. So better use that brain power for the bigger issues. And I happen to have a short, a good line with the Maven project chair. He's also a Dutch guy. So I just reached out to him and said, hey, look, this is the case. We have quite some time on our hands and we're willing to invest that into Maven. Are there any bigger topics that needs addressed and that you think we could pick up with the two of us? And that's how things went from relatively small, bigger, up until the level that we do today.
Okay, thanks.
I don't use Zoom that often. That's why I'm still looking for the stop share button, but I found it. So Maarten, over to you.
Yes, let me share my screen then. Yes, so I'm delighted that I can show you some of the good things that we have been working on. Most of the things that we have worked on was around the reactor in Maven. That might be something that you know about or might not know about. It's quite a critical part of Maven, actually. Definitely if you're working with multi-module projects. So if you're having a project of 1 million lines of code, then it's probably a multi-module project. So then you have definitely seen the reactor. But for the people who don't know what the reactor is, I will explain it, or I will show it actually. And I will show it to you using a project that we have built. So Maarten and I have been working on this cool multi-module project, especially for this demo, which is in the theme of an ecological search engine, because that's the thing what's all the hype about nowadays. You, for example, have the Ecosia search engine, which will plant a tree for every 10 or 100 searches that you do. I'm not sure. It's something like that. Well, we've also attempted to build a search engine like that. And it basically looks like this. So the eco search at the top, that's basically the parent module. So that's one module in our multi-module project. Then we have a scraper, which is another module. And then we have the CLI application, which is depending on two other submodules in our project, which is search websites and search images. So within the whole multi-module project, we also have some dependencies, which is quite important for the rest of the story. And actually, the scraper and the CLI application, well, actually, all of them, they also depend on the parent, which is in this case called the Eco Search Engine. One important thing to note is that the scraper is blue, and it's blue because another team is the owner of this this multi-module, module, and we are basically working in a team which is basically responsible for the yellow parts. So let's look at the project structure. So here at the root of our project, we have the parent POM. And then for each of the 4 modules, we have the different POMs. And that is basically the multi-module project. And if I open the parent POM, you can also see the modules listed in the parent POM. This is currently not in a particular order. So the order here doesn't really matter that much usually. And that is because the reactor will make sure that the modules will be put in order. So if you look at the diagram again, it would make sense that search websites and search images modules, those would have to build before the CLI application, because the CLI application depends on both of them. So let me just show you what we have built, because of course it's working. It's not doing much. It's a CLI application, of course, because we don't want to spend a lot of GPU cycles on expensive UIs. So that's why we are an ecological search engine. And well, here you can see the program. You can query websites and images by a tag. So if you want to search for something like a cat, then you would get, well, in this case, 0 results, because, well, it's just a demo project after all. But let's imagine that we are working on this this application, and we are going to we want to improve our test coverage actually. So let's open our tests. Well, this is basically just a very simple simple test. Here we have some stubbing. So we're stubbing both the website service, the website service and the images service, and yeah, here we basically have a positive test. And here we have a test where you get 0 results for the thing that you query. And let's just introduce a new test, because I'm interested in seeing what would happen if we search for null. So let's see if we made this program a bit defensive. So this is the test, and now we can actually get to running the test. And of course, we're using our own perfect CLI tool for this, which is Maven. And just before I want to run any Maven commands, I want to show you 2 aliases that I have made, and that's the Maven 3 alias, which is running the current last version of Maven 3, which is 3.8.4. I think it's the latest actually. And I also have the Maven 4 one. Because I want to compare Maven 3 and Maven 4, that's why I've built those aliases. If I ever would run just regular Maven, then I'm running Maven 4 as well. So if I ever would do that in this demo, then you can assume that it's Maven 4. So let's see. I wanted to show you what the reactor was. I can show you that easily by just running one of the earliest phases of the Maven default lifecycle, which is validate. This basically just validates your configuration of the POM files, I believe, and maybe, yeah, it's mostly about configuration of the POM files, I believe. And what you can see here in the Reactor Summary is, well, you can actually see the Reactor Summary. That's what I wanted to show you mostly. Here you can see all of the modules, and they are listed in order. So they have been built in order. And that is basically the whole reactor. But the nice thing of the reactor in Maven is that you can adjust what kind of project will be in the reactor by using different flags. So yeah, I will come to that. I will come to that soon. That's mostly the things that we have been working around. So let's try our test cases. So we run Maven test. Running it with Maven 4 currently because I used the regular mvn command. You can see that that's currently running the test cases for the scraper module. And well, that's not our module, it's from another team, but you can see that it's, yeah, it takes quite a while actually to finish these tests. And eventually we see that the test that we created unfortunately fails. So we have some work to do there to fix the business logic, apparently. But I mostly wanted to show you that the scraper tests, they're taking a very long time, which is annoying because, yeah, we just want to see whether the app tests were working fine. Well, and that was just taking like barely 2 seconds. So that's quite annoying. Now, Maven actually, I actually wanted to show you what happens when we run it with Maven 3. Because at the bottom, and here's already a small sneak peek, at the bottom you can see that Maven gives you a hint what you can do to continue your last build. So imagine that we would go back to the code and try to fix the business logic, and then we want to run the test again. Then Maven gives you a nice command basically to continue where your last module failed, basically. So in this case, when we run it with Maven 3, you can see that it gives you this hint. So what we can do is we can say Maven test minus rf, colon app, and rf stands for resume from. So basically it will resume the build from the build that failed, it resumes from the artifact that you give here. So the module that you put down there. So we expect actually, or I expected when I ran this for the first time, that I would see the same test case that I still did not fix, to see that fail again. But the problem currently is actually that it could not resolve the dependencies for the app module. So remember, the app module was dependent on 2 different modules inside of the same multi-module project, but apparently, yeah, Maven gives this nice hint like, hey, use -rf to continue the build. But apparently that doesn't work if you have like inter-module dependencies or inter-project dependencies. And that's quite a shame. But of course, there are multiple ways to do the same thing to select the app module basically, because you can also use -pl, which is short for -project. So now it will only build the app project. And it actually gets the same result. And then there are even more things that we can do to try to just run the app. And that is that you can also say, hey, I want to invoke a different POM file, basically. I want to invoke the POM file, which is in the app folder. Well, it has the same, and even if you go here and you try the same, it will constantly fail with the same issue. well, oh, actually, I'm now running it with Maven 4. I made a mistake there. If you would run it with Maven 3, then you would get the same issue. So there was quite a sneak peek there, because in Maven 4 we have, of course, fixed all of those things. So if you, for example, run with Maven 4, run the like this, run like resume from and then app, then you can see that it will suddenly work. And what I showed you before as well is if you run the hint in Maven 4, it changed. So I can quickly show it again, just so that you can see it. But basically, Maarten and I sat down and we thought like, hey, this minus RF thing, that's actually pretty cool that you can use that. But it's quite annoying if you have that you have to enter, that you have to type the module name that has filled for the last time. So we had to type something like Maven test minus RF, and then here would be the artifact ID of the module that you want to build again. In this case, the module is just 3 letters, but we have both reacted projects where the artifact ID would be easily 20 or 30 characters, which is quite annoying to type all of the time. So, of course, you could have copied and pasted the hints that I showed you, but we figured like, hey, Maven already knows which module filled, so we can basically just let Maven record that and offer the resume option. And so this is one of the features that that we have built into Maven as well. And so currently it's resuming the build from the last filled module, which is in this case app. So that's pretty cool. I think, yeah, I can show you that quickly. It will basically store the interesting information about the builds that the modules that I filled in the resume.properties file. So here you can see that the remaining projects are like app inside of the org eco search group ID, basically. So that's how it works. So it stores that in the target folder. So if you would clean it, if you would clean this build and you would try to run resume, then it will not work because it just, yeah, it has removed the resume.properties folder. So that's that are a couple of things of the reactor. I would like to continue with a couple more things about the reactor, but I'm not sure. I see that there's one thing in the chat. Is there a question, or is it just a regular?
No, it's a compliment for not using log4j for printing to printing the output. I appreciate that.
We are very careful there. Yeah.
Yeah, we already knew there were kind of leaks in there, so we figured system out would be better.
Yeah, maybe we should have told the world. Actually,
nah.
No. Anyhow, so what you can also do with the reactor, and that's also well, it's also partially working in Maven 3, is that you can use the also make command. So imagine we are working on the app and we just want to build all of the modules that are relevant for the app. So let's say we have changed something in the search websites. Yeah, we are just interested in seeing if our app tests are still working. So what you then can do is you can say, I want to test the app, and by using also make, it will actually invoke the same phase. So it will invoke test on all of the dependencies of app as well. So test will take a bit, will take quite a bit of time. Let's do compile, and here you can actually see that it's that the reactor is not actually building, not including the scraper module, because that's not relevant for our projects. Basically, it's just building the parent project and the 2 dependencies and app. You can also do it vice versa. So you can say like, I want to build one module and all of the modules that are dependent on me, basically. So now it will just compile, search websites and app. So there are quite some ways that you can tune the reactor basically, and there are quite some more as well, which I won't dive into today. But one thing is that I wanted to show you is that you can also do a bit more complex stuff as well using these tools that that Maven gives you. Because a couple of weeks ago, someone on Twitter asked if somebody who knew Maven, if it would be possible that he would run run the tests for the app module in this case, and just compile every module that he was dependent on. So he didn't want to run like the test phase for every dependency, but he just wants to compile that because that's like the minimum thing that you would need. Well, unfortunately, Maven doesn't have like you cannot do that in one Maven command, unfortunately, but you can chain Maven commands to get it working. And the thing how you would be able to do that is that you would say, I want to run, I want to compile basically I want to compile basically the app and everything that the app module needs, but I actually do not want to compile app itself. It's quite a strange syntax, but because the reactor in Maven first includes all of the things that you want to build in the reactor, and later in the latest step it will exclude everything that you want to exclude from the reactor. This will actually work because first it will include app, then it will include all of the dependencies from also make, and then it will exclude app itself. So currently this command will just build everything that app needs, and then we can simply chain it to say like, hey, I want to test app. And if you would run this, then you can see two commands, so two invocations of Maven. This is the first one, which contains all of the dependencies, and then it will build app, and that is, and it will test app as well. Well, it's still not working, so maybe it's time to actually fix this thing quickly, just for the sake of completeness. I think this should work, but we can quickly test that, of course. So let's just test app using Maven 4 because that's currently working. It's the only way to do it. Maven 3 will not work. And now we see that it's working fine. So this concludes the stuff about the reactor that we have mostly been working on. There is one more thing that I want to show you, or actually two more things that I want to show you regarding the chains that we have been working on. And there's one difference between Maven 3 and 4, which you can see pretty easily. So the output that you currently see, that is a Maven 4 output. And if you do a Maven 3 invocation, for example, validate, then you can see that it's suddenly a bit shorter, like the width is less big basically compared to the to Maven 4. I'm currently zoomed in a lot in my terminal, so if I would zoom out a bit to the normal size, it would be something like this. And then you can see that it is not using any, it's not using the space of my screen a lot basically. It's just using about a third of my space. And if you do it with Maven 4, it will actually use quite a bit more. It's nicer readable. It adapts as well. So if you would, like for example, if you would make it smaller, so let's say I'm going to zoom in a bit as well. So if you'd make it smaller and you run it with Maven 4, then it adapts to the maximum width that it's currently having. And for Maven 3, it will, let's see. Yeah, it will not adapt, of course, but even if you run it like this, basically it will not adapt, and it's pretty annoying to see. But Maven 4 will actually, even for such small screens, it will adapt as well. So it's a lot nicer to see, basically. So that's the console width thing that that we have also worked on. This is using JNC. That's a library which is able to tell you the width of the terminal among a lot of other things. But we use that for this, and I think the difference is like the minimal size is about 60 characters, and it will go to about 130 sizes in width at the maximum, instead of the constant 80 characters that Maven 3 will give you. So then I want to show you one more topic that we've also been working on, and that is about the inclusion or exclusion of like optionally including or excluding projects or profiles from a build. Because a lot of projects that I've worked on were around microservices, and each microservice had its own multi-module project. And most of those multi-module projects had the same setup. So they had their own project for their own submodule for the app itself, but they had a submodule for the performance test as well. And most of them also had a profile for the integration test, for running integration tests. So when I checked out a new project, I usually just went and did something like, okay, I want to just verify and I want to run the integration test, basically. So I want to activate the profile for integration test. The thing is, in this project, we haven't defined the integration test profile. So Maven will actually tell you, like Maven 4 will actually tell you, like, hey, integration test is not defined. But if you would run the same with Maven 3, you would actually see that it would just build it, and only at the end it will show you something like, hey, I couldn't activate this. I couldn't activate this profile, so bad luck for you. But that's actually quite annoying, because if you invoke like a build like this, you actually want to invoke the integration test profile. So what we have built is that you can add like a question mark before it, and this will basically say, please include the integration test profile if it exists. If it doesn't exist, that's fine. Just continue with your build. And in the at the top here, you can see the requested optional profiles integration tests could not be activated or deactivated because they do not exist. So that's quite handy. I also told you about the performance test modules that most of the repositories have. So then you would actually type projects, and you would say something like this: I want to just run the performance test. Well, what would happen if you would run this with Maven 3? It will basically break. So there's already inconsistency in Maven 3 and Maven 4 with including a project or a profile, because including a project that does not exist will break the build, and for a profile it will just continue and avoid it. So that it was already inconsistent, so we've now basically made it consistent. So currently, if you try to do this, then it will still fail. But if you would say, hey, I want to optionally include the performance test project, then it will just build the whole multi-module project because it's optionally, and it will also say it here, could not find the selector project in Reactor performance test. This would also work for excluding, like running the whole build except for performance test. You can also do that with the question mark, the exclamation mark. So this already works in Maven 3 as well, but we have built the question mark functionality basically. This can be very helpful in the case, for example, that you have one generic build pipeline for all of the hundreds of microservice projects that almost have the same module setup, basically. Like for example, I typically, when I checked out a project, I typically did not want to build the performance test module because that would take too long. So I would always just run Maven Verify without the performance test module by default. Yeah, so that concludes the demo of the things that we have been working on in Maven 4. Of course, we have worked on many other things, but those have been smaller and more in the background as well, I think. One of the things that we have also worked on is that you can fill the build if it logs anything above info level, for example. So that is that's fill on severity. I think I can show it to you. No, it's actually, does it help? I'm actually not sure how to. Nah, okay, sorry. It's
What do you want to show,
basically,
Martin?
yeah, I wanted to show you the listing of all the flags that you can give. Is it like the? I do not know that by heart.
That's dash help, I think.
Or yeah.
Or maybe dash help.
Right. This is what I wanted to show you. Yeah. So
yeah, there
this
it is.
is yeah. So this is also added indeed. So if you would run the build and you say like, hey, I want to fill on severity warning, and a warning is thrown in the logs, then your build will fill automatically. And that's built for people that really want to have clean builds and never have warnings or errors in their logs. So that's also some small thing that we have been working on.
You know what they say, a warning is an error in the making. So
that's right. It's very wise. Very wise.
a wise man once said that.
Yeah, I think you said that, right?
No,
Oh,
but thanks. Yeah, good to mention. By the way, you showed us the exclamation mark. If you're not on Windows but you're on Mac OS or Linux, you need to escape that one, because otherwise the shell will interpret it rather than it being passed as an argument to Maven.
Yeah.
Or you can put it inside quotes, or you put a backslash in front of it.
Yeah. And I think you can even put a minus before it. That will do the same thing, like exclude.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because then your terminal will not eat it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that concludes my demo, and then we go back to Maarten's screen share.
Right. You do.
Yeah.
Just without any further remarks, you do. All right. So thanks a lot, Martin.
Welcome.
Let me see, would be even better. Yeah, it clicks. Excellent. So we did this for how long, Martin? I think 3 years, something. 2-3 years, maybe.
2 years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in those 2 years, we learned a lot, and we want to share some of the things that we learned with you. We learned things about Maven itself, of course, because if you start hacking inside Maven, deep inside Maven, you get to know a little bit about the internals, or maybe a little bit more than just a little bit. We learned about core Maven concepts, and Martin already mentioned quite a few of them, the Reactor, projects, modules. And it turned out that the way that we were using them in our day-to-day job was not always the correct way, so as to say. So we used terminology that Maven itself would use in a different way. That's not per se bad, but well, if you want to file a bug report and you use different vocabulary, then it becomes a bit hard. But it's also very useful to know that, hey, there's all these bunch of selectors for projects and for profiles and for whatnot. It can really make your day-to-day job easier if you know that, and if you memorize them and know how to leverage them. We also learned a lot about how Maven is tested. Turns out for Maven plugins, they usually have a handful of sample projects that illustrate that the plugin does whatever it is supposed to do. But how is that for Maven itself? Well, Maven has an integration test suite, which is a different project on GitHub, which you can also check out, by the way. And it contains several thousands of projects, all tiny Maven projects with particular features in use or not in use. hey, we have a multi-module project. This one has a different repository. This one has profiles. This one has whatever. And then there's always a Java class or a Groovy script that invokes Maven and verifies that it does the right thing, the thing that we expect it to do. And it has saved us quite a few times, these tests, because then we thought, oh yeah, excellent. We have the resume from working. And then we broke something else. That's not the quality that you want to ship. We learned about, yeah, as I said, day-to-day use of Maven, phases, life cycles. How can you actually use the full power of what Maven has to offer for you, rather than just typing Maven clean install because somebody who was already on the project tells you that that's the way to build a project. Hint, it's not. It hardly ever is. And if it is, then your build is, well, I would say suboptimal. You hardly ever need clean install. But that's really somebody else's topic, actually, to spend an hour talking about it. We didn't only learn a lot about Maven, we also learned a lot of other things. For instance, about Java and peculiarities of the Java platform. So I remember we had this one test that verified that a certain file was updated. So we wrote our project and we hooked in a plugin and we rewrote some test code and it failed. But hey, wait, that file was modified, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Check the file access time. Yeah, sure, looks good. Lots and lots and lots of debugging. And it turned out there was actually a bug in Java itself where using file.lastModified gives you a value with the milliseconds stripped off. And if your test runs quick enough on any modern hardware, even if you don't have an M1 Pro, I mean, even if you have an old Dell machine, your test will run quick enough. Then the time difference as observed by looking at file.lastModified is simply 0. I think that eventually we got lazy and we introduced a threaded sleep for a second or something, didn't we? But because there simply is no workaround for this. It's a bug in Java. You can't work that around in your project. Has been fixed, by the way, in Java 10, but not backported to Java 8. And for Maven 4, Java 8 is going to be the baseline. So there's no way that we could avoid that bug. Another very interesting one had to deal with case-insensitive file systems. And that's where things get interesting, because Maarten is working on a Windows machine, as you may have noticed, and I'm working on a MacBook. So we have different types of file systems. And if you create a file object and you invoke get canonical path on it, you may get a different file name than the file name that you passed to the constructor of the file class. If you happen to be on a case-insensitive file system and there's a file with a different casing than what you supplied for. Again, very annoying, but also very hard to troubleshoot, because it always was like, yeah, it works on my machine, works on my machine. Yeah, but it doesn't lie on mine. We actually had a bar fight over it. And then we decided to do some debugging and eventually found this. So there's more. Yeah, still more. We learned quite a lot about GitHub Actions. Yeah, up until we did that, the only way that Maven was built was using the Jenkins instance that the Apache Software Foundation has, which is just physical hardware somewhere in the data center. And although very powerful and very reliable, it had some drawbacks. One of them, to me as a MacBook user, is that they don't support macOS builds. So basically, the macOS distribution of Maven was only tested manually on macOS, not in an automated way. But another thing that we found very annoying and also not very welcoming. Imagine that you have a bug in Maven and you think, oh, well, this is a trivial thing. I can solve this myself. Excellent. So you start coding away, test fixed, everything's fine. You submit a pull request through GitHub. Then up until a couple of years ago, you would get no feedback at all. You would have no idea if if it was okay or not, unless somebody would look at it, manually pull your changes from GitHub to the Apache Software Foundation infrastructure, and then tell you 1 hour later, yeah, some test failed. Yeah, well, it's the 21st century. Can't we just have instant feedback saying, hey, you broke a test, it's this particular test, that's why it broke, go fix it. So we did that using GitHub Actions, and we even made it a bit more advanced, saying stuff like, if you have a fork of the integration test project as well, we'll use that one, because maybe you have a fix in Maven that needs to be proven using the integration tests. And then we will use the updated integration tests as well. And just the other month, we added another one, which is a check if Maven can actually build itself. Also very useful if you start working towards a 4.0 release. And it has also been very instrumental in finding a few really edge case bugs on macOS, where every Maven committer who is using a MacBook was thinking that it was a problem on their machine, me included. I was like, yeah, it's such a weird thing. It's probably something borked on my Mac. I don't feel like figuring out. Well, there were a couple of people thinking exactly the same thing. But it wasn't only not working on my machine, it was a bug. And using GitHub Actions and the fact that they provide macOS builds, we could prove it was a bug on that only happened on macOS. We also had a couple of cases where we were investigating bugs and we were not so sure what the actual cause was. And then it may also be, it may give a hint to see when did the bug first occur, because probably with those changes, something broke. And that's how we learned to use Git bisect. And in the case of Maven, it's a bit more complex than the standard approach for a Git bisect, because you have to build Maven first, and then you can use Maven to actually build the project again. So yeah, but that was really interesting, and we learned a lot about that. And I had to use it the other week, and I still refer to my own blog post, like, how again did I do that? Because I can't remember still, but at least now I know the tool is there, and I know that you can use it. And there's even some non-technical lessons that we learned. Me personally, I'm really the type of person that says eat your own dog food. If you work on a product that you want to ship eventually, then by all means go use it yourself, because then you will find the nasty bugs, and then you know if it's really as easy to use as you think it is. So we wanted to do that with Maven, and Maarten explained in great detail how resume from works, and resume, and that you can add also make, and we tried doing that, and it kept on failing, which yeah, kind of made sense, because we were actually fixing that bug in resume from. So no, it doesn't work yet, because that's the bug we're trying to fix. But if it constantly tells you, hey, go use resume from, it's very hard to resist that. On the other hand, when your dog food is ready and cooked, don't forget to eat it. It's very, as I already said, it's really insightful to use the stuff that you have been developing and see if it actually works and if it behaves the way you expect it. And that's why we created 2 packages that you can easily install. So you can actually give the Maven 4 snapshots a try already, even though they aren't released yet. You can install them using Homebrew from a tab that I maintain, or you can use them, install them with Chocolati on Windows through a, what's that called on Chocolati actually? That's not a tab, is it?
No, it's a package, I believe.
Oh, a package. Well, okay. See, I'm really not a Windows user. For a package that Maarten maintains, I have to make a little disclaimer here. This is not official stuff. So it's something that Maarten and I do. And what it basically will do on your machine, it will just download the latest successful build from Jenkins. And that's all it does. It unpacks it for you. And there you are. That's the level of stability you get. It's the latest build that's green. So there may be bugs in there, and there sometimes will be bugs. I have found some bugs already, even in the work that Maarten and I did. But that's fine, as long as you can fall back to your regular Maven. And Maarten already showed a very convenient way of using aliases to achieve just that. So if your day-to-day work is impacted, then voila, Maven free, and you just go ahead. But if you want to really kick the tires, then you do Maven 4 or just Maven. And you can already benefit from some of the things that you just saw. Now, we're trying to wrap things up. I haven't seen much more questions in the meantime. Have we?
One question added just now.
Oh yeah, from Tomer. Any links for Linux users other than Brew? Unfortunately not. I think you can use Homebrew on Linux as well. I tried it 1 or 2 times on my Linux machine. So it should work, but I'm a bit cautious here because I don't use it every day. That's just all. But you could certainly give it a try, and if it does not work, then please let me know, because maybe it's something that I can easily fix and make your life easier as well.
Yeah, if you really want to try it, you can also check out the sources for Apache Maven and use Maven to build it.
Yeah, it's basically just Maven package.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's more convenient if somebody else already did it for you, right?
Yeah, because you would also have to change your path, for example, to include a new Maven distribution, and that is stuff that our Homebrew and Chocolatey solution will do.
Yeah.
And one more remark there: if you want to really switch back to the old Maven, or like the Maven 3.8.4, for example, you can easily like uninstall the chocolate package. And I think for Homebrew it's something similar, right? It's
yeah, you can just uninstall them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
like
I saw your aliases approach earlier this month on Java Zone, and I was like, yeah, that's by far the most convenient way. It's more convenient than actually unlinking or uninstalling and then installing the old one again.
Yeah, maybe I should build that into the chocolate package. It's that's it was just something that I did especially for the presentation, but it's quite handy indeed.
Yeah, it's cool. Anyway, as I said, we're going to wrap this up. Does it sound like fun contributing to Maven? Well, I have to say, when Maarten actually proposed the idea of going to do this, I was very enthusiastic about it, and I still am. It's certainly fun. It's something I would say. I learned a lot from doing this. That's one of the reasons. But another reason for me personally, at least, is that I know that there are so many Maven users around the world, and they benefit from the work that we do. And I have to say, in these weeks of lockback and log4j issues, it's a little bit less fun because we do get some issues into our Jira saying, you're vulnerable, blah, blah, blah. No, we're not. We're just downloading a log4j jar, that's all. Downloading a jar doesn't make your system vulnerable. But that's the small stuff. In general, it's really fun to do. The disadvantage is the Maven community isn't that big. I mean, if you look who is contributing on a regular basis, it's maybe 2 handful of people against tens of thousands of users of Maven. And that makes it sometimes hard to progress, because we have lots of ideas in the Maven community of things that we would like to improve, or old stuff that we want to get rid of. I mean, Maven is 20 years old. There's a lot of legacy code, I can assure you. But cleaning that up is not the easiest job. And if you are with just 2 handful of people, your priorities will shift over time, and it doesn't always end up in the situation that you want. So if you find a bug or a nuisance when you use Maven, there's basically 2 things you can do. You can run away and then start using Gradle or Ant or just rant on Twitter, on Reddit, and say, nah, old tool, I just like it, I hate it. Oh, by the way, did I mention the XML verbosity? Or you can roll up your sleeves and start working, start hacking in the code. And I would certainly invite you to do the latter, to roll up your sleeves and see if you can contribute. Sure, some issues may be very hard, harder even than you would have thought when you looked at them at first hand. But there is also a lot of easier things that are waiting for somebody to just pick it up and fix it. We have an up for grabs issue list, which is a subset of our Jira, with issues that are assessed by the committers and that we think are, well, really easy to solve or relatively easy to solve. Small improvements, upgrades, tiny bug fixes, documentation updates, not per se the most exciting stuff, but stuff that makes Maven better every contribution at a time. And by doing so, you can provide value to all those Java developers around the world that do use Maven. If you're unsure where to start, or you're unsure how to proceed, and you're like, somebody could help me out, there's a mailing list. It's called the Maven Dev mailing list. And I think all Maven committers are reading that list. And if you shout out for help there and say, hey, I'm looking at this issue, I know how to solve it, I'm not sure, or can you help me out because I've tried and this keeps on failing. There's always somebody who can try to help you out there. So join that mailing list, and if you need help improving Maven. And if you want to do that, here's the link to the up for grabs list. And I'll be tweeting about the slides in a few minutes after the session, so that you can easily review them. The Maven Dev mailing list, by the way, is also on the Maven website. And I would certainly like to invite all of you, if you have time, if you feel interested in how does Maven work and how can I help make Maven better, even more marvelous than it already is, then by all means join forces with us and help us make Maven 4 even better than it is today. Are there any other questions left at this stage, at this point? I'm keeping an eye on the chat, but there's nothing left there.
Maarten, so how do you explain, from your point of view, the handful of people?
That's an interesting one. I think, but that's my personal view. I think many people take it for granted. It's just there, right? And usually there aren't that many releases of Maven. I mean, we have seen quite a few in the past months, but usually there's a release every other year or something, maybe. It's really infrequent. So you don't get, your attention isn't drawn to it that often. I've even seen corporate environments where they pre-install Maven for you when you get your development machine. And then typically it's a very old version of Maven, of course. And you don't really bother. Maybe it's also because, and that's a bit related to the previous one, most of the logic of Maven is not in Maven. How contradictory as that may sound, most of the logic is in the plugins. Plugins get updated more often. It's easier for you to update the plugins in your project. It's just a single line change in your POM. And you're up to date. For instance, something like the compiler, it's fully in the Maven compiler plugin. It's not a core feature. Running tests is not a core feature. The only thing that Maven itself does is invoking plugins in the right order with the right arguments. And all the logic that you and I use in our projects is in the plugins. So Maven is yeah, it's the kind of thing people expect it to work. It's there. It's a bit behind the scenes, and people just don't realize, hey, that is a tool that is actively being maintained, and that actually has a roadmap, an idea for future development, and we're trying to change that today.
So you think that, for example, those up for grabs, you think that the learning curve that is not steep for contributing there?
That's at least how we selected them.
They're the least steep ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's definitely not something like, if you pick up an issue like that, it's mostly definitely not something that you have fixed within 5 or 10 minutes. So you definitely have some learning curve there to check out all of the necessary projects and to find your way around the code base, for example. But every how do I say it? Every Java engineer who has like a couple of years of experience should be able to check it out and start changing stuff in the code and building Maven again and trying out that new Maven version and see if your change has done something. So it's I think the learning curve of contributing to Maven is less high than contributing to something like Kubernetes, for example. At least that was my my experience.
Yeah, but that's also because you didn't know Go yet.
Well, I did know a bit of Go, but
okay.
not that much indeed. So
yeah,
it's not fully fair indeed, that comparison.
So how does those handful of committers, like what's their profile? So they hack on Maven on the evenings. They have like a day job for that.
I think most of us we hack in the evenings, I think, and Maarten and I are quite lucky then to get some company time to work on it as well.
Yep. I
but
know there are a
there
few more committers, by the way, that get some time from their company, but I know that the most active committers actually do it like on moments like these.
Yeah.
Like you already have your day job. You watch your kids to bed. It's dark. You can't go out because you're in a lockdown again. What do you start to do? Coding.
Yeah, for example, the chair of Maven, Robert Scholte he's from the Netherlands. He I think he works 4 days a week, and then on a Friday that's his Maven day. But he's not getting paid for it or something. It's just his own time that he puts into it.
I think that's an amazing fact. Maven is so widely used and is completely reliant on the free time of 2 handful of people.
Yeah,
it's a bit as Log4j, isn't it?
Yep.
It's the same type of situation where a small group of people builds something that many people rely upon.
Yeah, I think for Log4j it was only about 3 active contributors, I think, that are actively maintaining it. That's what I heard the other day.
Okay,
so,
that's even less. Yeah, it's even less than Maven. I mean, for Maven, I think it's between 5 and 10 who are really active, periodically doing bigger stuff, so as to say. And then we have quite a few people who do incidental small things. But yeah, I sometimes actually label an issue up for grabs, and it's sometimes it's even the kind of things that I'm like, yeah, I could do it right now, but I'm actually working on something else. I just noted it. But hey, if we have a long list of up for grab issues, then it makes it easier for people to start contributing and have this feeling of, yeah, I did something useful. That's cool. Now I want to do something more useful. But they are really issues that, as Maarten said, if you know Java, if you know your way around Git, then you should be fine. I actually had a colleague of mine who just started out, and we couldn't deploy him on a project immediately. And I said to him, here's the up for grab list, go figure out. And he literally he just came from school, just finished his degree, And he started, and it was like, oh yeah, I could do that. Yeah, that's not too hard. I can do that as well. So that was really a fun experience.
I think maybe maybe the industry needs some culture shift in those respect. In that respect, that more companies need to contribute to open source, but I mean, and the culture shift may come from developers demanding it like you did, but in a much more scalable way of making it like a common thing that people do.
Yeah. Well, in our case, it started with just that. I still vividly remember the conversation I had with my manager. Like, hey, okay, so I'm working at the client, and we're using Spring, and I find a bug in Spring. What do you expect me to do? I mean, I could work around it, but that doesn't feel right. No, he says you should fix it and critique, but only if the customer actually benefits from that bug fix. I said, yeah, sure, of course. Otherwise, we wouldn't be running into it in the first place, right? But then I said, what if the customer says, no, I don't pay you to work on open source. I pay you to build software for us. He said, then let them call me. I'll handle that, because that's the right thing to do. Open source is, and I'm really repeating myself here, it's not only about taking because it's free after all. It's a two-way thing. It's taking and it's giving. And the funny thing is, if you talk with engineers, they're always like, yeah, that makes sense. That's what open source is about. It's just that companies need to get this awareness as well.
Yeah, I agree. Once that thing becomes like a common engineering value, like doing code reviews, and it's common as code reviews, I mean, that's the change. People need to start injecting this thing into the culture of their company slowly.
Yeah, and
but it has to start somewhere.
Yeah, and even if you cannot spend the time on fixing the bug yourself, you can also give in other ways. Like, for example, you can pay the contributors. Like a lot of contributors have this donate option. Like, I mean, I don't have one, but if people are interested, I can make one, of course. No, just kidding. But I mean, a lot of the really active guys in the open source in the open source community, they have those donate buttons, and that really helps. Like, if you just give them a small amount of money, they are usually a bit more happy about it. So, but yeah, of course, spending time into committing stuff yourself is always better, I think.
And from an engineering point of view, it's way more fun to just hack away than to ask your manager for money and give it to somebody else. I mean, from this, we can actually learn a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Oh.
Yeah, I agree. I can say that personally, that this is something that I did inject into the company that I work for now, the Logs.io, that people, when they run into a bug, they spend time, part of the feature, fixing that bug, forking, fixing, and contributing. And even if you don't have time for that, and you're really stressed on time, the least thing you do is open a bug. The least thing you do, open a bug, file a complaint in the forum usually, and like that's the minimum. So that's thing. Again, it's hard to scale it, but that's the thing with
and then please include a minimal project or a minimal code snippet that illustrates what goes wrong and what you expect to happen, because that makes life of the open source maintainers a lot easier. Those are actually the best projects, because I remember that one or two times we actually took such a project and we just copied it into our integration tests and said, the integration test, well, basically you need to be able to run, say, Maven verify, and it should not fail. If this does not fail, then we're good. And then from there on, you can start fixing the bug and running the test. And if the tests are green, you're done for the day. And those projects are now part of our recurring integration test, and they run every build. That's not going to break again.
So in terms of the foundation that the Maven project is at, so how do you feel as a committer, the foundation, the Apache Foundation? What does it do for you or in general?
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, please add more comments to the things that I will say. But Apache is definitely leveraging like a framework for things like the infrastructure for building your like the CI infrastructure, for example, and also the repositories, for example, for putting your artifacts in. It has like the whole legal stuff set up for you, for example, so we don't have to care about that basically. We have things like Jira and stuff also set up for us. Yeah,
and all that in a day and age where GitHub didn't even exist. Remember, I mean, the ASF goes way back. What I would like to add to the list that you mentioned is the fact that the Apache Software Foundation describes the Apache way, which is like a standardized way of running an open source project, saying, okay, you have users, you have contributors, you have committers, you have the project management board, and you have the project management chair. This is how you make decisions in a project. You do that by opening a vote on the mailing list. And the rules are for a vote that it needs to be open for so much time. You need to have so many positive votes. You need to have no more than so much negative votes. So it really gives you a framework for decision making, basically. And that saves us from discussions on the meta level. How are we going to move forward? Well, that's actually an easy one. You write a proposal, you open a vote, and if enough people do vote and they vote positively, then the proposal is passed and we're good to go and we can continue. Rather than some open source projects having internal fights over who is the real one and who is the forked one, and how are we going to force a decision in this particular very difficult topic. Yeah, we have a framework for that. That's easy.
And you think it's different if you compare it to the CNCF Foundation, which is like the new person in town, so to speak, the new kid in town?
Yeah, it's for the cloud native, right? Cloud native.
The cloud native, yes.
Yeah.
They may have different procedures. I don't know, but they are relatively new indeed, and the ASF has already been doing this for many years. And let's take the fuzz around Elastic and the company changing the license model for the project, and then Amazon saying we're going to fork it because we don't like it, and all of a sudden you have two Elastics. And which one are you going to use? Which one is the right one? And you don't know. And I'm not saying that's never going to happen within the ASF, but at least they have some predefined rules of the game, you could say. This is how we consider open source to be done.
Yeah, and the CNCF might have exactly the same, but
they probably have.
Yeah, I'm not experienced there, at least. I've only signed their what is it?
CLA.
The CLA indeed, because I wanted to contribute to Kubernetes.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I don't have much experience with CNCF.